Chapter 8. Time seemed to slow down to a standstill while Enshli watched. As the cackling flames livened up in delightful fashion, he became frozen in awe. They were simply, absolutely beautiful. Then they got put out. A quick drench of river water soaked the burning moss, and just like that, they were gone. And with it, Enshli was forcefully snapped back to reality. As a disappointed sigh escaped his lips, the girl picked up the flint and iron pirate herself. With scrunched eyebrows and an adamant gaze, she emulated the man. But her arms weren't strong enough, and her skills left much to be desired. Yet she continued on, taking brief breaks between each attempt. The man guided her encouragingly, and even from afar, Enshli could sense an affectionate warmth. It tugged at his heartstrings a little. As the hours passed, the sky began to dim, and the trees cast long shadows upon the land. The birds flew back to their nests, and the sun ducked behind the clouds to rouse up the tranquil moon. A chilling gust picked up and sent mild shivers down Enshli's spine. The man had decided that it was time to call it a day, and the girl, who had grown weary, obliged without a fuss. Then they both set off on their merry way home. In usual circumstances, it was also time for Enshli to return as well. His tribe would worry if he didn't. But, with the recent happenings still fresh in his mind, there was no way he could just up and leave. After checking that nobody was nearby, he sat down to work. Using the remaining materials, he tried out this majestic ritual himself and clanged the rocks together. Up close, the sound was even more jarring, and the smell, ugh. The less said about it, the better. A minute passed, then 2, then 5, then 10, then 20. Still, there was no fire. Enshli gave a soft sigh and rested his arms. By now, both rocks seemed like miniature versions of themselves, and minuscule specks littered the floor. His muscles started to grow sore, and his shoulders started to creak like an old man's. Streams of sweat trickled down his forehead and wetted his back, as if he had taken a dip in the river himself. And that's what he did. It helped him cool down, both mentally and physically. After thoroughly drying his hands, he went on. With another set of rocks and with more fungi, he tried all over again. And for a couple more hours, he did just that. By now, the moon had risen above the clouds, illuminating the darkness with a lovely mild glow. The stars twinkled and glistered in unison, and the night sky was painted with the alluring beauty of the Milky Way. Still, there was no success.
Should I go home?
Enshli muttered. He knew that he should, it was evident. And he got up, not back to his cave though, but to the cavern earlier. After all, the materials were now running low. He picked up some branches of firewood too. They could come in handy later. He had no intention of returning, and, well, there was no one here to talk him out of it. And with a brand new stash, it was time for another round. And dozens more that would inevitably follow. A few more hours passed, and she was still rooted to his spot. It was way past bedtime, but fueled with anticipation, his mind showed no signs of fatigue. His body, on the other hand, did. A lot, in fact, but for him, at that moment, it was just a small price to pay. And the bashing of rocks continued, and continued. Just one more minute, Enshli thought, then I'll give myself a breather. He took a deep breath, but then he saw something. It was a spark, right on top of a piece of fungi. There was no time to waste. He grabbed the piece and stuck it right inside some dry moss. He blew as hard and hurriedly as he could, pushing his lungs to the limit. Smoke began to rise, and an intense heat started to grow. In an instant, the moss was set alight. Here it was. Fire. flames whirled and twirled, they spun and pranced. Red, yellow, orange, white. These colors mixed and meshed together as they illuminated the dim-lit night. The blaze shot up, leaping towards the heavens as if to vehemently challenge the celestial bodies themselves. With each passing second, the fiery forks sizzled and rampaged as they grew taller and taller. Enshli had seen fire before, many times in fact, but this particular fire, it was undoubtedly the best he had ever seen. His eyes grew watery, his throat hitched, and a single teardrop rolled down his cheek. A wide grin stretched over his face, and his chest, his beating heart that died down a year ago, began to pound non-stop. He had forgotten this feeling. He had left it back with his father's demise, but now he had found it again. The feeling of being alive. Finally, he had done it. Finally. Fire